was the way the children answered their WH questions during a reading assessment. And I brought that with me, their actual responses. I brought that with me and the results of myself and all my other tests that I was giving. And voila, they thought I had something important, because up until this point, they were attaching my speech and language report to their reading and psychological assessment report. So I just wanted to mention that it was a journey, a collaborative journey. And then in 1985, these two volumes, Communication Skills and Classroom Success, Therapy and Assessment, edited by Charlene Simon, came out. And I was reading those voraciously because they were all about not only syntax and vocabulary, but this thing called narrative discourse. It was spattered throughout the two volumes. And through it, I began to know the work of Carol Westby, and I began to know Charlene Simon quite well as I called her up and told her about different things that I was looking at in the books that reminded me of my students. This is a picture of the Curtis Blake Center here. But anyway, that led eventually to the Merritt and Lyle's assessment of narratives that we're going to focus on today. We're going to focus on one of the stories from that by the name of Shipwrecked. And that was when I was looking for, at the Curtis Blake Center, now this was in 1987, looking for something for older students to do a narrative assessment on. And there were very few things at the time. So I called Donna Merritt at the University of Connecticut, and she just said that it was just perfect for us to use that. So that's the way we got to what we're using today as far as the assessment. Okay, so, I just wanted to mention that before we delve into more of the topic at hand today, I wanted to touch on the story grammar marker itself, just for a brief overview.
And just mention about, we do have more in-depth.
Oh yes, and we do have more in-depth things on the story grammar marker, because we have free webinars on our website, as well as all of our manuals and materials. Plus we have blogs on our websites with many, many, many lesson plans. Okay, so this is a quote from the Charlene Simon text by Carol Westby about narratives that kind of got to me at the time. We dream, remember, anticipate, hope, despair, love, hate, believe, doubt, plan, construct, gossip, and learn in narrative. So narrative is not only an academic tool for children to learn from, it's a social aspect. Okay, so what is the story grammar marker? And this is just a picture of it. It's a braid, which represents the strands of oral language, and then superimposed on that is the macro structure of a story. So the braid represents what we're going to call the microstructure, and the icons represent the macro structure, or the big organizational structure of a story. So we have the character, the setting, the initiating event, which we call the kickoff, because it doesn't have to be a problem, but it could be. It could be something exciting. The internal response, right on there is a heart for the feeling. The thought bubble, which is our new aspect for the mental states. The planned attempts, the direct consequence is a bow tying things together, and then the resolution is how everything turns out at the end. Okay. And I like to show it as that these icons of the macro structure kind of are at the surface of the water. This is what we see, but in depth, each one of them goes very, very deep in their own right. And then under that, as a foundation of the icons themselves. We have the developmental stages taken from research. The developmental stages, in other words, generally how children develop their ability to narrate, from just a simple description to all the way up to interactive episodes where a character or a group of characters does something and someone responds in a certain way. And at the very bottom, the deepest level is when something happens as a kickoff, how does someone process that? How does someone process how they feel, their mental states, how the feelings and the mental states offset each other, and how they ultimately come to a plan? This is vital for making decisions. It's vital for problem solving, and it's really vital for life. So it goes deeply via the developmental stages, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to take these icons and show you the analysis of a student's narrative and where they are. Okay, you'll notice that on this it has the macro structure. It has the macro structure, and then at the bottom it talks about the use of and, first, next, after that, then, and finally, but, so, and because. So anyway, this has some microstructure as far as cohesion in the macro structure, and we're going to talk about that today. All right. I just wanted to mention this. This is a decision tree from the Green Manual, the Story Grammar Marker Manual, which, Linda, you've used a lot in your work with parents and teachers to explain the developmental stages. And I just wondered if you'd want to just talk to that a little bit.
Well, I love this graphic because by answering these questions, it just takes you right through the decision-making process. So starting with the first arrow at the top there where it says start, the first question you ask yourself after you look at the narrative that you've obtained, does the episode have a temporarily related series of events? And you answer just yes or no. And if it doesn't, then that's really you're at a descriptive sequence. If it does, it pulls you down to the next level. Does the episode have a causally related sequence of actions? If there's no causally related action, you're at the action sequence level, and so forth. And it just methodically takes you down. And then what I also like is, let's say you come down to the one, does the episode have evidence of goal-directed behavior? And so if the answer is no, that's going to segue you to the right to reaction sequence. And then you can additionally ask yourself some more questions to double check, wow, am I really at this level? Is there an event that launches an action or a series of actions? Is there causal cohesion? Is there an intent, the intended feeling is not had been expressed, and the result of actions is merely another action? So you answer those questions. If the child solidly answers, you can solidly say, yes, they have all those things, then the child would be at a reactive sequence level. If some of those items may be missing, for example, there's no causal cohesion, they use the cohesion of an action sequence level, then you might say that, you would say that they are at the emergent reaction sequence level. They're on the cusp of getting it. If we could get them to include causal cohesion, they would be solidly there. So it really is a black and white method of helping you determine what level a child's at. First looking at macro, and then it gets a little bit into micro. And that's what I like about it, because it's pretty black and white, and parents understand diagrams such as this, as well as me.
People asked, what manual can they find this in?
This is in the Story Grammar Marker Manual, the first manual that you get if you get a kit or if you've had a workshop on Story Grammar Marker. It's the green manual.
And somebody just made a comment, it would be great if this went with the test of narrative language. And I agree. I think a lot of times you give those standardized tests and it tells you, yes, there's an impairment, or no, there's not an impairment, but it doesn't tell you in a finer manner about where they are in their narrative development. And as what I say all the time, what are you going to do on Monday morning? This tells you what you're going to do on Monday morning. And that's a very good point. This is a tool for monitoring progress and how to guide your treatment. It's not just a tool to make a decision, yes or not, whether there's an impairment.
Exactly. And it also emphasizes the temporal and causal relationships that are vital for us to get our students to show within their story. Okay.
And just so that I just want to make a quick, at the end of this, we're going to show you a, is this an update? Yes. So at the end of this, I'm going to show you a 39-page downloadable resource that Mary Ellen and Linda wrote in the past, days, based on taking some of the specific things out of other manuals that they thought you could take to use tomorrow. And the benefit of this is if you do decide to purchase it at the end of this and download it, you will get a code, and that amount of, it's $15. And if you decide to purchase another manual down the line, you will get a code that will credit you for $15. So you don't really lose anything by downloading it. But it is a 39-page, like, packed document. And this is one of the things that's in it, just so you know.
But no matter what first manual you bought, if it was the green one, or Carolyn Golgaby just wrote about how she has a white one, so maybe you have the original. It was
like I did.
It was always in the manual from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. So next.
Okay, so the developmental sequence, the decision-making tree, and all of those things combine to create macro and micro structures. The macro structure is the big organizational structure represented by the icons. And of course, the story grammar marker is 29 years old now. So that's been around a long time. And the microstructure represents the sentences. It's called microstructure, but it's really divided into the elements of what makes up a sentence. And a long time ago, when I first joined the Curtis Flake Center, we as a profession had a lot of background in microstructure with developmental sentence scoring and with all kinds of work at the sentence level. Okay. So this is just a definition of the macro structure, because that's where we'll be beginning. The global organizational structure of story elements, or a story grammar of a story episode or series of episodes. And the most important thing here is that it's independent of content. So whatever content you put into this organizational structure, it will become organized that way. Okay. The microstructure, I'm kind of giving the background today, I guess. The microstructure is the internal language organization of a narrative. Okay, it's what glues the story together. Westby refers to it as story sparkle. People who had to diagram sentences in school at one point were actually diagramming the microstructure. Some of us liked it and we became speech pathologists. Others didn't. So anyway, diagramming sentences, we had to do the subject and the verb and then everything that went under them. And that's what we're looking for when we're analyzing microstructure. Okay. And these are the language features. Microstructure makes oral language literate. In other words, it bolsters it from a one word or just a phrase response to sentences. So an elaborated noun phrase, the big scary fish, or the big black cat next to the steps. Verb phrase, the tense use and the adverb use. The big scary fish swam slowly, and you could extend that down the stream. So swam slowly where would answer an adverb, an adverbial phrase. Mental state verbs are very important as students get older, very important to include in oral language and also in writing. The words remember, what I remember from the past, what I know for a fact from research or from information text, what I think, and then what I realize. Linguistic verbs, whispered, yelled, and asked about our tone of voice, tells us about the tone, and then the conjunctions, and, but, so, because, and then the temporal conjunctions. Those are basic conjunctions. If we could get our students to learn those and expand their use of and, we would be doing a lot. So Linda, I liked your, I hope you remember it because I'm asking you about it, but your analogy to the word realize, when you realized that you had the Christmas presents.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, using that word.
Realize.
When I work with students, I always used to say, there's all these mental state verbs here, but I always worked with the younger students at the day school. So I would say, I need you to think about what you're thinking. What do you know for a fact? What do you remember from the past? And what do you realize you need to do? So I gave the example of one day my daughter was away at college, and I thought this would be a great day to open up to wrap all my Christmas presents. And I laid them all out on the kitchen table and I had them all organized. And then suddenly my husband said, we need to go pick up yada yada. So I said, great. And I got in the car and I went down about a half a mile and I went, I realized I had to go home because Rachel just called to said she was coming to visit me. And I realized I left all the presents out on the table. And so it was a great way to explain to the kids how a thought popped in my head and I realized how I had to change my plan about what I was doing. So we had a lot of fun giving a big and talking about what we realized we needed to do, and they shared their own experiences.
So that's great.
And somebody else asked, what, who first started talking about microstructures, illiterate language features? Are there any resources that you could recommend?
Well, the microstructure goes way back into Halliday and Hassan, way back into cohesive ties. Laura Lee's developmental sentence scoring.
Right, I was going to say, that's the big one in speech pathology. For those of us who have been in the field 40 years, we all had to do that.
Mm-hmm. And
that's all you did.
I used to analyze my son, Jerry, who's now 42. And it talked about the pronoun use, the verb use, WH questions, interrogative reversals, all kinds of things like that. So if you look into that, and I have a reference at the end of things today about syntax, but it goes way back. But I think DSS, developmental sentence scoring, would give you a boost.
And I believe that there was really a focus on that sentence level doing the DSS because the thought at the time was if we could get them to make better sentences, they would make better stories. But it doesn't necessarily work that way. But that was when I was in school in the late 1970s, that it was all about get the syntax. There wasn't really talking about the narrative. But as I've said to Mary Ellen, when a kid comes home from school every day, they're not concerned about whether they're using a good past tense verb or they're adding a present progressive. They come home from school because they want to tell you a story about what happened. It's all about the story. So I think it's important that we talk about this macro structure as well as the microstructure. We need to do both together.
Yes. Okay. So why narrative assessment? This is just kind of why is that narrative-based language assessment and intervention. Assessing a narrative provides you with information about your students' progress. It talks about, and we've mentioned it, comprehension, WH questions, the word syntax, pragmatics, which you need a lot if you're doing telepractice, sequencing, putting things in order, temporal order, causal connecting, use of cohesion, elaborated noun phrases. It lets us look at more than one character that the child might be talking about, identifying emotions, problem solving, all those kinds of things. Narrative intervention using the story grammar marker simultaneously targets discourse, sentence level construction, and expansion, which would be your syntax and your morphology, as well as vocabulary concerns. So we can look at all of those things together, which is what Linda and I talked about in terms of documentation. And then the simultaneously targeting assists us to present things to parents, teachers, and other professionals that we might want to collaborate with. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, now this narrative microstructure coding, this is the code, and Lisa Fuller at the day school, is she on?
She's on.
And she's on the webinar, so give a shout out to Lisa.
Lisa.
Yes, you developed that at the Curtis Blake Day School for looking at the microstructure. What are we looking for? We're looking for cohesive ties. We're looking for elaborated noun phrases and verb phrases, so we'd be putting those in quotation marks. We're looking for adverbs. We're looking for mental states, and that's in the critical thinking triangle. I'm sure that was the focus of that. And then the linguistic verbs are a single underlining. So it's a way to look through, which Linda is going to do with you. And then the other aspect is the macro structure represented by the icons in the story grammar marker. So these are the two basic things we're using. Okay. And then we're using Shipwrecked from the Merritt and Lyles study, 1987 JSHR. And as I said, at that time, we were looking for something to use with children who were older. We had Big Al as a picture book, and we were looking for something that would have multi-episodes and maybe challenge somebody a little bit more. So this is the reference for it, 1973, that was in there, and then they used it in 1987 for the study. Okay. All right, so this is Shipwrecked.
Yep, and this is the story Shipwrecked. So now I'm going to take you through the story that was read to the student, and then they were asked to retell this. And as Mary Ellen said, Shipwrecked was designed, the study was done on students in grades 4 through 6. And they heard this story, and then they answered comprehension questions about that. So we at the day school use this with junior high level, even though the original study was grades 4 to 6, because when you have a language-based learning disability and working memory issues, it's difficult to do the same things that your same age peers would do. So we decided that this would be more appropriate for our junior high. With our younger students, we've been using the stories by Mercer Mayer, the frog stories in the strong narrative assessment protocol, but we needed something a little bit more challenging. Shipwreck can be difficult to transition to if you've been using Big Al, because when you first start with the strong narrative assessment protocol, those are wordless picture books, and the student has a book to hold in front of them with pictures while they hear a taped story. We then progress to Big Al, which was read to them again with pictures. But then when you segue into Shipwrecked, this is a listening comprehension, and the child really has to have also strong visualizing abilities to be able to keep this in their mind. So sometimes we would see their narratives kind of take a drop when we went from using Big Al to Shipwrecked. But right now I'm going to read the Shipwrecked story to you, and I'd like you to make a movie in your mind. I would tell a student, I'm going to be reading you a story. I want you to remember the important details as if you were reporting it to me as a person on the news. You don't have to remember every detail, just the highlight details that make the story make sense. At the end, I'm going to be asking you some questions, and the questions will be easy for you to answer because you will have retold me the story. So here we go. Once there were 3 brothers who often fished together in the ocean. They were good sailors and usually were gone from home for only a short time. One day, they all fell asleep on their boat. While they slept, the anchor broke loose and the boat drifted away in the dark night. It finally crashed against some rocks. The boys woke up frightened, but then saw an island about a mile from the wrecked boat. They swam for their lives and finally all reached the island. The boys were grateful to be alive, but knew they were lost. This is just the first episode of a 4-episode story. And we need Sheila to segue to the next one. There we go. In the beginning, life on the island was very hard. The boys couldn't find fresh water or food, but they knew they could survive if they worked together. First, they looked for coconuts. Then they caught birds with their bare hands and cooked them over an open fire. They always had enough to eat and drink and never felt hungry again. Whoop, there we go. The blazing sun was always hot on the island, but one day the rainy season began. The brothers knew they had to build a shelter. They searched the island and found parts of their wrecked boat. They tied the wood together and built a simple cabin. They were happier inside the cabin and kept dry when the rain came. The boys still dreamed every night of returning home to their family. One day, they spotted a ship. They became excited and set fire to some large bushes. The black smoke rose high in the sky, and the ship's captain spotted it. He ordered his men to go ashore, where the sailors were welcomed by the 3 brothers. They shouted their thanks. After 15 long months on the island, they were finally going home. Now, Mary Ellen did a wonderful job of taking Shipwrecked and analyzing it and putting the story grammar, macro structure, the icons next to each of the elements for these episodes. And as I said before, this was a 4-episode narrative. What I like about this 4-episode narrative is it's a challenge for the students who are able to handle with their working memory the length of that. However, you can take the entire story and it can be telescoped into 1 episode. So Mary Ellen has marked all the separate episodes here, and I think this was the freebie that was available ahead of time. So you see 4, and then if you can go back 1 slide, you see there's episode 1, and then the next page has 2 and 3, and then the next page is episode 4, and then where it says summary, that is often the narrative retell that you will obtain on a student with a language-based learning disability as well as working memory issues. They will take all 4 episodes and telescope it into 1 episode. Are there any questions about that story? Does anybody need to chat anything? Do you have any? And that was available to you. That story was available online.
Yeah. Linda, I just wanted to say that the in parentheses, all the story grammar components on the one you read.
Yes.
In the original article.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So people were thinking about it way back when.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just that the entire field wasn't thinking about it. So when we were asking even when did, DSS come out, you could see that original story. Did Meriden Lyles add those information in 87?
Correct.
They did
Stein
it, yeah.
and Glenn and all of them were a little before that.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, it's a great story in that respect. So these are the comprehension questions that you ask after the student has retold the story for you. And they're divided into factual information questions. And then the story grammar questions, the second set, those are really what we would think of as inferential questions. So questions, the factual ones include what were the brothers doing on the boat? What happened when the boys fell asleep? How did the boys get to the island? What did the boys eat? How long were the boys on the island? What did the brothers see one day in the ocean? How did the brothers signal the ship? What did the ship's captain do? So factual questions typically are answered with greater accuracy for most students. And in the research study that Merritt and Lyles did, both the students, the regular ed students, as well as the students with the impairments, answered correctly on average. The mean was 6 out of 8 of these questions. So when I administered this test, when we administered, this narrative, we would state that a passing score of 75% in this section would be a passing score, because that was the score that the students received in the study, 6 out of 8. In terms of story grammar questions, the first one was, in the beginning of the story, why were the boys frightened? So you can see we have questions that are inferential in nature because they're asking why. Why did the brothers start swimming? Why were the boys grateful when they got to the island? Why did the brothers work together? Why didn't the boys starve? Why did the boys need to build a cabin? Why did the ship's captain see the boys? Why did the captain order his men to go ashore? None of this information was provided in the story. The child has to infer this information. And the last question is very telling because it says, why did the captain order his men to go ashore? And oftentimes they'll say, because he knew the boys were there. And in reality, he didn't know that. He doesn't know what the cause of the fire is. And it's always kind of interesting. And sometimes that's a great one to follow up on. And Mary Ellen, you said that you also do something else after you have them tell the story.
I'm unmuted. Yes, I often have them write the point of view of the captain, what he saw, what he felt, all those kinds of things. And I just look at it as a snapshot into their writing about this. And I also wanted to mention that in the Merritt and Lyles study, both groups had some complete episodes and some that weren't complete. And but the language impaired students had fewer main and subordinate clauses and more incomplete episodes. So that's what we're looking at.
So that is, and that really is telling, because it shows that those students with the language-based learning disabilities are having difficulty at both the macro and the micro structure level. Correct. And their difficulties at the micro is affecting their ability to put the macro together, and their difficulty at the macro is going to make them break down at the micro. It's kind of a dog chasing its tail. It just goes around and around. I think that somebody asked the question about how long does this take to administer? And I would always, it really depends on the child. So you can get a child who seems to have like this photographic memory of what they've heard, and they tell you every detail. And if they're having word retrieval issues and reformulations, it's going to be a painful process. It's going to be a longer administration. And then you have the child who telescopes it and just spits the whole thing out in about 90 seconds. So it's very dependent upon the child that you're administering it to. But I always used to allow a minimum of 20 minutes to administer a narrative because I wanted it to be very relaxed and them not to worry about that.
And
then you taped it.
Yes, and it was I always taped it. I had a little digital tape recorder, and you can that enables you to download the files onto your computer so that you have that digital copy of it. And it's tiny. You can put it in front of them. But in order to transcribe what they've said, it does need to be taped. And of course, there's the kids who have to fool around with the tape recorder and have fun with it before you even start. So you have to allow for all of that.
And Linda, the 75% passing is on the first set of questions. What about the SGM?
And the second set of questions as well. For the students, the regular ed cohort students, also their average was 6 out of 8. And I think for the language impaired, was it 4? 4 out of 8. So it showed a difference in the inferencing. And I find that when you are administering this to older students, they do. Both groups typically do well in the factual. It is the inferential component that's very indicative of a student with a language impairment. And so it's nice to see when you've been working a while on story grammar and focusing on the critical thinking triangle and constantly getting them to think about why characters are motivated to do what they're doing, you see growth in their ability to answer these story grammar questions when you administer this again to assess progress. It's very helpful. These are the responses, the answer key to the questions. So for question number 1, which I forgot even what it is. I probably have it over here in some paperwork, but what were the brothers doing on the boat? So the answer to that would be fishing, sleeping, or sailing. So they have to say fishing or sleeping or sailing to receive 2 points. And then I think the next question is what happened? The next question is what happened when the boys fell asleep? And then the answers to that is they have to tell you any one of those answers. The anchor broke, the boat drifted, or it crashed on rocks. They would receive 2 points for 2 out of 3 and 1 point for 1 out of 3. The third question is how did they get to the island? And the answer is they swam. That's just a 2-pointer. You have to get that. It's all or nothing. And what did they eat? If they can tell you coconuts and birds, they receive a 2. If they can only give you 1 item, they would receive a 1. And I guess at this point, it's a good time to talk about, you really want to know what these kids know for information, and you want to make sure that their language impairment isn't, or their word retrieval difficulties, or their syntax formulation isn't interfering with their ability to answer this information. So if a child said they ate coconuts, I may say, yes, and somebody asks them, do you ask them the questions prior to making them retell the story? No, the retell is first. And we'll go into that. They do the retell, and then after the retell, they answer these questions. So if they said they ate coconuts, I would then say, tell me more. And I would record that coconuts, and then I'd put a double slash mark and then say, tell me more. And if they could come up with another answer, I would say birds. No, I don't tell them how much the questions are worth. You know, we tell them afterwards, depending on their age and the child, what they received for a response, but no. And then how long were they on the island? 15 months. And if they say a year, you can say a probe. But if they come up with like 3 months or 10 months or whatever, if they're off, they're off. Number 6 is what did they see one day in the ocean? And the answer is a boat. But if they say a ship, that's great. And then number 7, how did they signal the ship? They can respond, they set fires to some bushes would be a 1. They saw smoke. If they give you one response or the other, I always then say, tell me more, and see if they can tell me, add on to that and give me the other part, the fire. If their first response is just smoke though, they receive a 1. If you say, tell me more, and they're giving you more, you still score them the 1 based on their first response. Number 8, what did the ship's captain do? And he saw the smoke, he ordered the men to go ashore, and if they give you both answers, you receive a 2 for that. And then in terms of the story grammar marker questions, in the beginning of the story, why were the boys frightened? They were lost at sea, and that's a 2, or they crashed against the rock, or one other incident that occurred would be just a 1. Number 2, why did the brothers start swimming? Survival. To get to the island implies it's part of a survival plan. To avoid drowning or sinking, a vague idea of survival would be just a 1. Number 3, why were the boys grateful when they got to the island? Again, survival and or safety, or that they were alive would be a 2. Number 4, why did they work together? For a reference to cooperation or mutual advantage, survival again, or cooperation. A vague reference to survival, to look for some scarce items, would be just a 1. Number 5, why didn't the boys starve? The answer would be they looked for food, more specifically coconut, birds, and water, if they could name the specific items. If they can only give you 1 item or food, or if they just say food, that would be a 1. Number 6, why did the boys need to build a cabin? They had a need for shelter. The rainy season began, or prolonged rain. If they said just rain, that would be a 1. 7, why did the ship's captain see the boys? And they have to talk about the signal of the smoke. If they say just the fire, that would be a 1. And then number 8, why did he order his men to go ashore? To investigate the problem. And this is important because he does not know that there's people there. He is sending people ashore to investigate the problem. when children say it's to rescue, that answer, he doesn't know that there's anybody there. So that's really, they've missed the point, that they're not really thinking about the story from the perspective of the captain at this point, who does not know that there are people there. This was somebody I could see from the chat asked, what age do you use this with? And it was given to children in the grades 4 through 6. We used it with language impaired students in grades 7 and 8. I think you could still use this through high school. It really depends on the child that you're working with. As I said, at the day school, we started with the SNAP, the Strong Narrative Assessment Protocol, which is no longer in existence. It's the Frog, Mercer, Mayer books, Frog, One Frog Too Many. I forgot all of those, but we used that. I used to use those up to grade 5. In grade 6, we used Big Al. We read Big Al to them and allowed them to see the pictures. And then in grades 7 and 8, we segued into Shipwrecked.
And I was going to say that a lot of times the questions, of course, are after the narrative assessment, after they tell the story.
Correct.
And oftentimes there are so many children who have the ability to answer questions, but they cannot put it into the causal and temporal structure of a narrative. So that's a big deal.
And that's important. And that's always an important thing to explain to parents, because these kids make such slow growth, and sometimes it's difficult to show the progress that they're making. So sometimes the progress is that they didn't go up a macro structure, but their microstructure got better, or their ability to answer factual questions got better, or their ability to answer inferential questions got better. So, we're going to take whatever we can get, and it's necessary to break all this information apart like this versus just giving an overall level.
Yes, and before you get to the next, somebody asked about limitations using the story for assessment purposes with children who have been through trauma or have heightened anxiety. Have you run into that?
Right, yes. Well, it's interesting you say that, because there's another story that we used to administer, Buried Alive, that was very similar to the Shipwrecked, where this man was buried alive during a snowstorm, and we stopped giving that one because that didn't go well. No, I have not administered this to anybody with a trauma, and that is a very good point. So if you are at all concerned about that, I would choose another prompt that is a complete episode. And Mary and Ellen and I had talked about that. If you can choose another book, and the book will work as long as you take Mary Ellen's, basically the story grammar marker, and say they can answer a question. If there's an answer and a question that be given for each element. Is there a character? Was there a setting? Is there an initiating event? Is there a feeling about it? Did the characters have a plan? Were there 3 attempts? Was there a direct consequence and a resolution? And if the prompt you choose, whether it's a picture book or a written story, you can answer each of those questions, then I would use that prompt instead. Yeah, I wouldn't give anything to anybody you thought was going to wreck their day and bring up trauma for them. Where everybody's traumatized right now, this whole telepractice is very exhausting to do.
And this is really an adventure story that has a good ending.
Yeah, it does. Yes, they do get saved. But for those kids who, can't stand it when their mom and dad go out of the bedroom and they can't see them anymore, I get it. We don't know what's going to trigger everybody else.
Okay, I just want to, before we get, because we do want to move along to the rest of it, but I do want to say a lot of people are asking about how to find the downloads and how to find this information. And so I don't typically post those until after the webinar, because think about all of you who actually are sitting here with us and really excited about this. I don't like to usually post before, because then anybody will just download and then people don't necessarily go for the instruction, and we want people to have the instruction. So everything that you need will be posted. The certificate of attendance, the slides, the free handout will all be posted by 5 p.m. Eastern tonight. So it'll be after the workshop ends at 4, and then I will work on getting that posted. So if you go to the link I posted in the chat now, you're not going to see this information yet. Sorry about that. But yeah, we'll get to the next part now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Alrighty, O'Reilly. This is a sample narrative retelling of a student that is in middle school. And I used Mary Ellen's beautiful digital icons. And then Bill Noss, who does all their graphics, billified it and made it look beautiful. And he, so you can see the icons, the storygram macro structure elements are on the left, going down the left side of the paper. And on the right side, where all the typed up part is, you can see how we have coded the microstructure using the system that Lisa developed. So, for example, he said there are these 3 boys that had a boat. So that was the character. And then he said they usually took it out for a short time. So he's given me a setting in terms of time. And then usually an out are double underlined because that is the coding system for an adverb. And excuse me, I forgot to mention in the first line, 3 boys in short time are noun phrases. So they are placed in quotation marks. And we came up with this system, Lisa came up with this system, so it'd be easier for us to take this information, the macro information and the micro information, and chart it on the tools that I'm going to be showing you shortly. In the next sentence, we have the setting and an initiating event. One day, noun phrase, they all fell asleep on the boat, and all of a sudden the anchor came undone, and the boat drifted off. So that's one long sentence, but each time the child has used the additive cohesive tie word and, that brings it down to another line because it's another segment of a sentence. But to bring that word and down, to bring that section of the sentence down to another line, there has to be a subject and a verb in it. And then the boat drifted off has another subject and a verb there. So you can see I've circled the cohesive ties and I've double underlined the word off. Is in parentheses because that's a reformulation, a word retrieval issue. And then we have the cohesive tie and then the cohesive tie when they woke up, when the boat hit some rocks, again, cohesive tie, noun phrase, and then they woke up, and then they discovered an island. And it's interesting, you can see his repetition there as he's trying to reformulate what he wants to tell me. And then they tried to survive. So that is his attempt at the plan. It is really more of an inferred plan because he did not use a planning word, but the icon for plan is still there to show that. And then one day they spotted a ship, again, noun phrases and cohesion, a word retrieval issue, and then they set some bushes on fire. Now we have the black smoke rise in the sky. So now we have our direct consequence icon and another noun phrase, and the boat, the ship. So the boat is in parentheses because he said the boat, and then he revised it to say the ship, spotted them and send their crew to them. And then we have both a direct consequence and a resolution in the last sentence. And the 3 boys were glad to be going home after 3 months, I believe. And this sentence gets a little complicated. When you have an and at the beginning of the sentence, it's really, he's not using that and really as additive cohesion. He's almost really just using that as a sentence starter, so it's not circled. And then it's hard to see probably maybe on the size of it, but after 3 months is interesting because 3 months is a noun phrase that's part of an adverb phrase after 3 months. So that's why you see there's a bunch of quotation marks in there. And I believe is him saying, I believe. It's not a mental state of the character. It's just him saying, I believe. So we can't give him credit for knowing the mental states of the characters in the story. Did this make sense? You can give me a thumbs up.
Yes.
And now here are the answers to the comprehension questions. So his factual information, I have the questions there, and then I just wrote the person who administered this to this child gave me his answers, and they are typed up there. So he said they usually go out for a short little time and then come back. And she said, tell me some more. And then the response was, one day they fell asleep and anchor came undone. So in parentheses, it says 0/1 because his first response was a 0. but by probing him and scaffolding, he was able, at telling him to tell me more, he received a score of 1. So you can, I don't really need to go through all these answers. You can, read them and see them, but at the top you'll see where it says factual information questions. It says 10/16. Those he received 10 points out of 16, which is a 63%. With scaffolding, that means with saying, tell me more, to elaborate, he went up to 13 out of 16 points, which is an 81%. So that's cool information to know, that on his own, he came up with 63, but if you go fishing with him, fishing for more information, he's up to 81%, and passing in this section is a 75. So he hasn't passed it, but it shows that with scaffolding. So this is good information from classroom teachers. Don't take this kid's first response. Make him elaborate, make him tell you more. He can get to that more additional information and be correct. And then the bottom, 11/20, he received 11 points. Oh, I think that's a mistake. That should be 11 out of 16. You can tell I was thinking out of the year 2020. It should be 11/16, which is a 69%. So that's my mistake on that form. We'll fix that for you. And you can see at the bottom on his last question how he didn't receive the correct answer. Why did they go ashore? And he said to rescue whatever is on the island. He's thinking there has to be something on the island. Somebody had to start that fire. And so he's assuming that the captain knows that there's somebody there. Somebody said, what's the book for 5th grade and younger? I used to use the Strong Narrative Assessment Protocol, which are the Mercer-Mayer frog stories. Now, taking this information from that narrative that the student just gave me, we place this information on these progress monitoring forms. There's a progress monitor for macro, a progress monitor for micro, there's a graph for macro, and there's a graph for micro. And as I thought about the bind everybody's in right now with this telepractice, how do you relay information to your parents? And I was thinking about DocHub, which Sean Sweeney introduced me to years ago, and I just love it. It works very well with Google Classroom and the whole Google platform, so that's why I'm familiar with that. It's an online annotator that allows you to create templates that you can add text to, draw shapes, and update the content. Using DocHub, I could take Mary Ellen's document, her data collection forms, and analyze and put the information on them. It works well with Dropbox, Google Drive, Gmail, and Box accounts. And what I like about it is it allows you to take this information, put it on these progress monitor forms, and then it can be emailed to parents and to team members as you document what you're doing during this time of telepractice. There's many other ways that you can document. There's other annotation formats. I just happen to know this one, so that's the one I'm showing today.
And Linda, I don't know if you want to say now just about somebody asked if it was a free service. I don't know if you want to.
And DocHub is free. You can sign up. When you sign up for DocHub, you're allowed to send, I think, 10 emails a day, and I think only 3 emails a day, and you can create 10 documents a day. So that's great if you're not sending a lot of emails per day, and if you're not sending, not making a lot of copies, you're limited to 10 copies per day. If you want to pay for the service, it is $60 per year or $7 a month. That's the deal with that. So I need to get into DocHub, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So now this is the trick. I got to reduce this. I got to go to this. Now I got to get you back up. Oh, if I do this, I'm going to be very impressed with myself. Let me know if you can see this.
Yes.
Cool. All right. So I have 18 minutes, and I always was a fast talker. So.
And just so that you, and just, I want to just pipe in here. Am I muted or am I okay?
You're okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not muted.
No.
Okay. So I want to pipe in here and say that everything Linda is doing, she also it was, I think, her colleague Jennifer, and she put together a very comprehensive step-by-step 4-page document about how to do exactly what Linda's going to show here. That is also part of that 39-page resource that that Linda and Mary Ellen created. So just to let you know, if you're panicked about like, oh geez, I don't exactly know how to do this, it is available in that. So just so you know, while you're watching Linda, it's just easier to see someone do it.
Yeah. So you'll be able to watch me do this, but I with a glass of wine one night, took Jennifer Metz's very detailed directions and updated it so that you could go step by step. So DocHub has what they call a dashboard, and I'm on my my dashboard is right here. And if I hit my dashboard, you see all the projects I've done over time, and there's another page to it. And on the bottom side over here, it says Linda LaFontaine's organizations. When I was part of the Curtis Blake Day School, I had my dashboard, and then I had another dashboard that was connected to the Curtis Blake Day School. And on that dashboard, I had many, many templates that I had made. But now that I'm no longer at the school, I've lost all those templates. And I just posted the 4 that we're going to be using today. And when you look at DocHub, when you look at this list, and I have trifocals, which is very amazing to Sheila that I wear trifocals, it's too much for me to see all of this. So I like to make templates, and a template is a document that you can go into and use more than one time for a different student. So I've taken 4 of Mary Ellen's progress monitoring tools, her progress monitor for narrative macro structure, and then her macro structure graph. And then I took her progress monitor for microstructure, and I took her microstructure graph, and I made 4 templates. If I want to make a new copy for a student, I would hit new copy, and I would give it a new name, just as you would if you were working in a Word document that you had as a template and you wanted to save as and give it a new name for another student. And then there's view copies, and view copies is an easier way to find things in DocHub. If you go to templates and you say to view copies, you'll only see in that list your copies of that one document. And I find that that's an easier way to surf here. So if we start with the progress monitor, that's the first form that I fill out after I've administered a narrative. And I've made a copy of this previously. So I have the SGM progress monitor narrative macro structure for a sample student. I'm going to open this up. So I made a, Sheila, how do I get rid of this over here? I guess will that get, oh good. So that'll help me. I'm all set. Okay. So here's my document that I made. I took Mary Ellen's progress monitor for narrative macro structure, and I had previously made a template. So you can see sample student is in a box here. The year is in a box. So by making this template, I entered all these fields that enable somebody to type into them and add information. So the narrative can be administered and scored 4 times on this form. So I have just entered from 420 shipwrecked was administered, and I've left the score out because we're going to talk about that. This is an oral narrative retelling, which is an informal assessment type. And then in this box, some of the forms have a box for the evaluator's name, but this one does not. So I would type my name in here. I've looked at this student's narrative and I have scored it. And to score using this form, you go to the top here where there's a stamp, and that's where I chose a circle stamp, and I use that stamp to put the scores for this child's narrative. So under character, he received a score of 1 because he used a pronoun. That is one of the drawbacks of the story Shipwrecked. There's not names to those boys. So in Mary Ellen's write-up, she gave them names so that you would be able to score them with having a main character name and talking about their personality qualities. Mary Ellen added that at the beginning of the freebie handout. You'll see that there. In terms of setting, he stated they were on a boat. He listed 3 or more temporally sequenced actions. He does not receive a score of 4 because he did not use temporal cohesion. He did state the kickoff, and he related it to the setting because he said one day the anchor broke loose. He did not respond to have an internal response of the characters. He did not, let me get rid of that customized thing there. Sorry about that. I'll make it easier. He did not have any mental states of the characters expressed. He inferred the plan. We talked about that earlier. He did not use a planning word. In terms of the critical thinking triangle, the three components, the kickoff, the feeling, and the plan, he included a kickoff and a plan. It receives a score of 2. He did have basically one attempt. He telescoped it all into, they got water, food, and then even built a shelter. So those were his attempts. He did, has his direct consequence at the end was he related the direct consequence to an action. They set some fires to the bushes, and then the ship captain spotted them. And at the end, he had a feeling because he stated that they were glad, I think it was, they were glad to see them. So if you take all these numbers that I've circled and come down below here, you'll see that comes to a score of 16. Again, there's a text box that's been inserted there. This was done in 4/2020. And you'll notice these say date here because when I'm making the template, you can choose to put a date in certain locations. And then I've taken also his answers to the comprehension questions and I've included them in the bottom here in this box. And if I was to re-administer this to him, in a year from now or a few months from now, I would just add in and put a new date. I could put 6/2020, and then I could go down here and I could put his scores for his inferential questions down there and add that, which I won't do because you'll be getting this form. I just want to briefly show you, if you administer this again to him, here I could put, again, that 6/20. I was administering it there, and I could come up and I can pick on this stamp and I could say that I want the circle, and then it's going to bring me a circle down here, and hopefully the next time I administer it to him, he's going to receive a score of 2, and that will place that circle there. And once you pick something in DocHub, this circle I can carry down and I can score every element of his second narrative that he would have given me. Okay, so I'm gonna, and when you want to get rid of this little circle or anything that you're working on or a box, you go back to this arrow, the pointer, and it gets rid of that tool for you. And I'm going to take off this circle here, and I'm going to take off these dates because these are the forms that are going to you, and I didn't want those to be on there. When you make a template, you do not want to finalize a template, and these are all in the directions, this information. You don't want to finalize it because then you will not be able to add additional information to it. I want to be able to go back and add to these fields at a later time. So I'm just going to go to the big D over here, and it's going to give me a warning. There's unsaved changes. Are you sure you would like to continue? And I say, okay. Now I go back to my templates again, and I'm going to, we were on the macro structure progress monitor. I want to go to the macro structure graph, and I want to pull up this other form. And I have this form I love, and parents love this form. All those numbers you saw me score on the previous page have now been placed on this graph. And it shows you on a scale of 0 to 4 where this child falls in each of these macro structure elements. And down below here on the template, I put a circle for where they currently are and a square for what their goal is, because that is the way Mary Ellen has designed the progress monitor. Circle for where they currently are, square for where you want to go. And if we look at this right now, and I know I'm like, have to talk a little faster, but if you're looking at this, what pops out at you? What do you see as a need for this child? He's in 8th grade. Where do you think you'd start working? What would you want to be your short-term objective? Or short-term objectives? Where would you start your focus in terms of macro structure for this student based on this chart? And people can just type into the chat. Sheila can always read it to me. I don't think I can see the chat right now. Do you hear me? You guys are muted. Unmute.
Sorry.
Oh, there you go. Did anybody put anything into the chat?
Yes, can you hear mental states, emotions, feelings, more information about characters, perspective taking?
Yeah, those are great.
Response, perspective, feelings, emotions.
Yep, perfect.
More specific character traits, characters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those
Very
are
critical thinking elements.
And Mariel and I talked about that because you see how these are so low over here. It's kind of concerning. But what really bothers me is because as an 8th grader, he's just missing all this information over here. I mean, that makes me sick that this poor guy is still struggling to tell you, and he may know this information, but he's not telling it to us. So
Yeah, somebody, Danielle just commented, he isn't thinking about thinking at all.
No.
Yeah.
Correct. That's exactly it. So there's a gazillion. There's no right or wrong answer about this. I mean, unless your answer, I guess there could be a wrong one. You could be completely clueless, but there's just so many things you can do. And what I love about the Progress Monitor form, you saw how I numbered everything. I was numbering things from 0 to 4. So in each category, I think there's 11 categories on that Progress Monitor. And there's the numbers 0 to 4. So that means the numbers 1 to 4 are 4 short-term objectives times 11 macrostructure sections. There are 44 short-term objectives on that form that Mary Ellen has delineated for you. As I said at the beginning, there's really nothing in life you need to know other than Mary Ellen's stuff, and then you'll be all set. That's what I think. So anyways, this is just to show you this form. I know we're running short on time. We're probably at 4 o'clock, but I'm going to take you back out of this.
That's okay, Linda, because we just after this, it's just the picking the prize and stuff.
Okay. So we'll go back to the, and of course, you know, you always tell the kids you got to go back to the big D, which is such a problem, calling it the big D, but that's what we'll call it. So now I want to go to the Progress Monitor for the microstructure. And again, I'm going to ask to view my copy that I've made.
And I just want to, Linda, I just want to, I've seen a couple of questions on this.
Oh, sure.
So these progress monitoring forms that Linda is showing you are in our manuals. So all of our manuals have various progress monitoring forms. Right. These are from the data collection manual. And so they're not something that's in DocHub. DocHub is just the platform that we're using to annotate them. So the actual documents are downloadable from our manuals. And the at the end, I'm going to share with you some information about how to get the downloadable that Mary Ellen and Linda created this week that has everything that's in this presentation. So I will show that in a minute. I'm going to let Linda continue.
And I will also show you how that all works. So here, if we pull up her the microstructure form, again, this is another progress monitor. It says microstructure. I've put text boxes here for sample student. And again, we've analyzed his narrative for the microstructure. He did have compound sentences. He had pronouns designating the main character. But you notice how even he's a 3 here, but he could potentially, this could be a short-term objective, that he has complex sentences. A pronoun short-term objective could be 2, 3, or 4. You can go, it's just mind-boggling what's in here. He did have that adverb clause that we talked about after 3 months. In terms of these literate language features, he is using just a plain noun modifier. There's so much more room for growth there. His conjunctions were primarily, he had a few temporal, but they were primarily additive. So if I was scoring this for a child, I would go back in, whoop, I picked the wrong thing. I would go back in and I would get a stamp, and I would actually like to put another stamp here because I feel this kid really is crossing, he's primarily additive with a little bit of temporal. So you can do that with this form. You can put you can circle more than one item. In terms of adverbs, he had an adverb of degree because he said usually, but I would love to see him do a narrative where he's got adverbs of time and adverbs of manner, and I would circle all of them when I saw that. To me, that would be cool growth in a narrative. No mental state verbs. That's killing me. That's killing me right now. No linguistic verbs. That's killing me in terms of him. So his macro structure score was a 14, and then you would then work on those short-term objectives, and hopefully each time you assessed him, you would be able to see an increase in the scores here. And you, as well as there's a text box here where you could type in any comments that you would like. And then I'm just going to go back and show you the last template.
And then after you show that, Linda, people would definitely, I know you're going to show it, but I wanted to remind you, people definitely want to know how to convert this for Google Drive to share with their students and parents.
Yeah, and
also,
We could use.
I'll show you that. So the last form was, what is it? The microstructure graph, right? Go ahead. What was your question?
and then the other thing was just, does the graph autofill with the data you type in the first template, or do you have to manually add the point?
You have to manually put it into the other one. It doesn't automatic populate. This form was probably one of my most favorite forms, and I love the graphs because the parents that I worked with were just as language impaired as their children, 9 times out of 10. And I like graphs. I thought it was easier for the parents to understand both the graph for the macrostructure as well as this microstructure graph. So taking that information that we coded using Lisa's system, we would fill this chart out. So he used the word "and" 4 times, and he used the word "and then" 7 times. And in the box at the bottom here, he used 2 different additive cohesive tie words a total of 11 times. So that's what the number means under here in the total. He used 2 temporal ties a total of 3 times. He did not have any causal. Let me go up to the top of the column here. He didn't have any coordinating, and he didn't have any causal cohesion. Ties between story grammar components. He connected the setting to the initiating event using a cohesive tie, and he connected some attempts to other attempts using a cohesive tie. You have to be using a cohesive tie to be able to get credit in this column here. This is the list of the noun phrases that he used. He used a total of 7 different noun phrases, a total of 9 times. He didn't have any more complex ones. He had 3 adverbs he used 3 times, and no mental state and no linguistic verbs. So that was the baseline for that. So again, you can say, golly, this kid is down in the land here, and we really want him over here as an older student. He should be using causal and coordinating. This is a way to explain to parent. I want to see the second time I administer it, and I put the information in the second column. I want these columns actually to go down, and I'd like to see something happening over here. I would like to see more noun phrases of a little bit more variety. He's got some and some quite a bit. He's kind of in the land of some. And then, of course, if you're working on those mental state verbs and you're thinking about characters' thoughts, hopefully you would be seeing some mental state verbs and some linguistic verbs in this column. I'm going to reduce this here, see if I can get this to work. So over here where it says other actions, this is what you click on when you want to share or send a document. So if I pick on share or send right here, I typically send it as an attachment, and I'm going to type in SM Mauro. I think I've spelled that right. So SM Mauro at mindwingconcepts.com. You can add in whatever you want in this box here, and then I send it as a no reply document via DocHub. You could send this to all your team members, principals, sped directors, parents, whoever you need, and it just sends it that way. I think it's supposed to go out. Usually it tells me it sent it. I keep getting there we go, document sent. Okay, so that's how you do that.
What about sending it through the Google Drive?
So in Google Drive, you're going to be sharing or sending. You can still share it or send it that way also to the students. Yep, you can do it that way. What I like to do is I often if I'm using it with a student, you will get a link to it, and it will give you a link that you will then attach into Google Classroom. So if we go out of here, I'm going to come out of here. But those directions that information is also in those directions. So let's say I want to go to my drive, and I have a folder called MindWing Maps, and I have downloaded the maps that Mary Ellen has in all her progress monitoring tools that she's created. Let's say I go into SGM, the SGM manual, and I pull up, let's say I pull up this one. So I don't want to pull up this one and make a template out of this one. I want to make a copy of this so that I will always have the original in here without anything on it. So I'm making a copy right now, and I need to see where it went. It calls it copy, and I like to rename them, and I rename them and I call them templates. So it says copy of page, and I'm going to call it template. template, and you can do all sorts of things. I'm not going to worry about all the rest of this name, but you make it be something that makes sense to you. And so I'm just going to call it template page 55, and then it's going to move it someplace down here. Great. So now I'm going to open it up, and I'm a member of DocHub. So at the top here, it says open with, and I'm going to go into DocHub. And it loads the document. It loads the document for me. Now you can see, like, I can't type into anything right now. I have to make this be a template. And again, all these directions, I've done them step by step. So don't worry about, I'm trying not to go too fast, but you're going to go over here and you go to something called actions, and then you convert it to a template. And it always is questioning you. It's like having a little kid. Document saved. And then you want to edit your template. You want to make a template right now. So I'm going to edit it. And it says, do you want to create it? Again, it has to question you. Yep, you're going to create the role. Fields data successfully. And then over here, I have all these tools. So I can choose a text field or a paragraph field. So if I choose a text field, it's going to give me a field that I'm going to put over here. And I can have one line. But because her character box is actually 2 lines there, you might decide that, no, I don't want just a text. I don't want that right there. I really want a paragraph field. So if you change what you're doing, it's very forgiving, and you just go in there, and now I'm going to be able to type in a couple lines. And if you make a mistake, you just hit the trash button. And anytime you want to switch out from one tool to another, you just hit that arrow. But you see how I've got this box here? DocHub has remembered this size box, and so that's going to enable me to rapidly go down this whole document and just putting box after box. But as soon as I want to get rid of this, I go to the arrow and I'm gone with that. Okay, and then when you're done with it, you're going to hit finish editing, and those are all in the directions. And then you're going to be able to make these. You're going to do a fill a copy, and I've got that all in there. There's a fill a copy. It shows you the steps that you go through to use it with a student. It shows you where the link, I've explained how you get a link, and a link that you copy and paste, and then you would go into Google Classroom and you would paste that as an assignment for them to complete. But all the information is in there. And I'm sure I've made some mistakes on doing it, but you can also all go onto DocHub online and find out information. All right, it's 4:10. I think I have to shut up.
Well, Linda, this is
Linda,
fabulous.
if you want to stop, you were amazing.
Yes, I'm going to stop my sharing here. Okay.
So then I'm going to show. So Linda, I don't know if you can hear me, but thank you so much. You are just amazing. We're so grateful that you are partnering with us on this and have partnered with us on so much over the years. I'm going to share really quick now to give you a preview of what the document looks like that is going to be in that download. So hold on, let me just share it. Okay.
And you can email me if you have questions about it. So
yes, I will share that at the end. So
share my email and then just email me.
Okay, everyone, here is the this 39-page downloadable. That's $14.95, okay? And that's a limited time price because we're doing this for you because of COVID and everything else. We want to be able to have you have something to use tomorrow. And Linda and Mary Ellen worked super, super, super hard on this, and our graphic designer, Bill Noss, is like, I don't even know. He's just brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And yes, he did so much. So this is the introduction. If you download this, you get it right away. And this is the table of contents of everything that's included in it. As you can see, it's chock full. This is some sort of a more of a, you know, a snapshot, I guess it says that, a snapshot of literal oral language. That's what it is. And somebody had asked earlier about culture and linguistic style. We do touch on that, and we touch on
section in our first.
And there's this, I did mention that there's a section in our manual. This is all about macro structure. This is all about microstructure. This is microstructure. This is the coding system that Linda mentioned that Lisa Fuller had done. This is all about the developmental sequence, the decision tree that Linda showed. You can watch the presentation again. It will be it is being recorded. These are all the guiding questions to decide where someone is in the developmental sequence.
And the handout is, and somebody asked, is it relevant to an elementary age? It's relevant to any age.
Any age.
Any age.
Thank you, Diane. This is, so these are the forms, the individual forms that Linda showed. Julie, I'm going to give you the link in a second. I'm going to show you actually online. And these are the progress monitoring forms that will be included as separate forms so that you can just upload them on, and they're already filled in, right, Linda, with the templates? They're already made into
Yes.
templates.
Yes. So everybody owes me something, alcohol or whatever. No, just
exactly. You have to praise Linda because she is just, oh my gosh. So here's the text for Shipwrecked you get the analysis. This is also available free, but this comes in here. And then I'm going to do the prizes right after this. I'm sorry, it's taking a little longer.
Yes, chocolate. Oh, I love chocolate.
Oh yes, chocolate. That would be great. And then you also get Linda's sample of the retelling, and then you get the questions, the answer key, the students' answers, Linda's students' answers, and then the filled in forms that Linda did for the graph. And then the appendix, like we mentioned, this is all the directions for using. There's no shipping cost because this is a downloadable. So no shipping. So it's $14.95. That's it. And then you will receive a code that you can apply toward buying something else if you want to. So these are the directions. See, step by step by step. Linda has done these with her colleague Jennifer and Jennifer Metz, who worked with Linda on this. And then here are the forms that you get. You're going to get individual forms to upload. Okay. So that is it. And it is, and then all these references. Mm-hmm. It is pretty amazing. And then I'm going to show you now. I'm going to show you where to find those on our website because
yeah, you can edit on those forms. That's why you don't save that template. It tells you that in the directions. You don't want to save it. You want to just get back out of it so you can go back in again and edit it. And you can edit your template at any time, and those directions are in there.
Okay, so this is our website. It's mindwingconcepts.com. You see up here, mindwingconcepts.com, and then if you go down, just scroll a little bit. Wait, it's right here. New products, zoom in on documentation. Okay. We look like twins. Oh, I love that. That said that. Oh, Mary Ellen and Linda, you are amazing together. Oh, that's so awesome.
Well, you know, when we used to present at the day school, they used to get a kick out of us because Mary Ellen, the brainiac, calm and would present and have all this knowledge. Then I would get on, and then we'd go back and forth. So.
This is great. So this is it, everyone. This is the so this is zoom in because it's a Zoom. So we're trying to play on words. The author of Shipwrecked is called Verdick. What's her first name? Mary Verdick. I scoured the internet to try to find like the original. It's out of print. It's from the 1970s. But
it's in the original article, 1987 at ASHA.
Kathleen, we're going to keep this. We're going to keep this price through COVID shutdown. So I say limited because we don't know, but we're basically giving 40 pages of cherry-picked information, and it's not available in this form. A couple of the things like the forms are available in our manuals, but no, all of the information is not in the Storygram marker manuals.
That was what I realized is that from years of going to ASHA is that people are not familiar with these progress monitoring forms. There's so much information packed on those 2 progress monitors for helping you determine your goals. It's so much more than just getting a narrative level that I felt like you really needed to have this specific information and a specific way to get it out to team members digitally to show what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly.
And I just wanted to say, the 0 to 4 charts help you immensely target your therapy.
Yes.
So it's kind of vital to do that. And
Right.
when I give workshops, I'm out doing workshops, unless it's an intensive, it's usually the beginning use of the story grammar marker. And these graphs and things like that are in our more advanced manuals. And so this is an attempt to pull them down together for you to use during this COVID time when it's vital to really use something like a graph. Everybody loves a graph. Okay. All right.
It's the printer is
Right.
hold on one second, babe. My 6-year-old needs to print something. I just want to share. Okay.
And there's tons of paper in there.
It's a kickoff. It's a kickoff. Yes, it is. The printer is jammed. It's a kickoff. So I just want to mention this. We are scheduling video conference web-based workshops. We've had a lot of several school districts that have taken advantage of this with us, which has been amazing. And they have loved it. And so I wanted to mention that to you. And yeah, it's very different than being in person, but people have really given us a lot of great feedback. Now we want to do the raffle. So if I'm not, and we will get to questions right after this if you have any. So, okay. So the first winner, and this is going to be for the 39-page downloadable, is Elizabeth Beersgreen. Elizabeth, if you're there, okay, Elizabeth. Oh, you're there. Yay. Okay. And then it's BIERSGREEN. And you win the 39-page downloadable. Okay. Cool. And the second one, I got to plug this into my little phone thing. Oh, okay. Leanne Hirata. Leanne, you're getting the digital downloads, the digital icons. I mean, are you there, Leanne? Yay! Yeah. Okay. You're getting those digital icons. And if anyone is interested in the digital icons, I can show you right after this. A lot of people asked during the presentation. And then the third winner, let's see. Where are you guys from, by the way? Leanne, are you from, let's see, if you want to share with people. And then the third.
Oh my goodness, Hawaii, cool.
Your name sounded familiar.
We love Hawaii.
And then the third winner is Cheryl Solow, S-O-L-O-W, Solo. I don't know if you're there, Cheryl. Yes, great. Okay.
And so where are you from, Cheryl? And where's Cheryl from?
Where are you from, Cheryl? Let's see. Oh, there's Kate Preisner is on, Mom.
Oh, yes.
And so congratulations to all of you who won. And I will show you on here just really quick how, I'm just looking on my, sorry, it just takes a second to scroll back over. For the downloads, sorry. Okay, hold on one second, then we can get back.
Bill just made a point that you could fill those in with Adobe Acrobat as well.
Yes, Adobe, yes, you can fill those. You don't have to use DocHub. Yes, that's a really good point. And thank you, Bill. There's Bill. Everyone clap for Bill. He did an amazing job getting this 39-pager written in a couple days with us. He's our graphic designer. He's been with Mary Ellen
since the beginning,
25 years. So if you go to our website, you click on distance learning, you can see here we have a few of our products. You can get the icons for free if you buy a quick start or a kit. If you want to but really it's a great deal. What we just gave away is it's $19.95. You get all of this. It's 127 high quality images. And like we said before, if there's something if there's any questions, oh, Samantha, you're from the Philippines. Yay, thank you for
Hi.
joining. And Angela Wheeler
Great.
said, thanks to Bill. She knows how hard Bill works. She's always
Mhm.
hearing us talk about it, and he sent
Yeah.
her a bunch of things. So if there's any other questions, we can hang on for a few more minutes. If you have anything for Mary Ellen or for Linda that we didn't get to, people, let's see. People, so the question was, will you be having more webinars? So on our website, we have all of the webinars that we've done since any time, way before COVID, obviously, but we've been doing them once every like 8 to 10 days since COVID started to try to bring you some timely information. Okay, and then Alana, you should have received, the digital icons should have come in a PowerPoint file, and then you just click on them and save. Let's see. Elizabeth, if you can hear me, will you email me? I'm gonna click send my email to, hold on.
And somebody said, Linda, they did not understand, but it went so fast, I couldn't read it.
Wait, how to transfer dot. So yeah, and Linda, do you want to type your email into that,
Where?
into the bottom of the,
Do I do into the chat?
yeah, into the chat. Okay, another question. Do you have templates for the Mercer Mayer books? You can use the template for any.
For anything. You
Yes.
just have to analyze it first. So you would just have to know what your structure was of the book that or the story that you were using.
And, Carolyn Gogobai, nice to see you, Carolyn. You just asked a really amazing question about, do you have something you can share with parents and children for retells? And we actually are in the middle of producing a guide for parents to use with their children. And I can't find, I think you'd be really interested in hearing about the titles to the chapters. And of course, I don't have them right in front of me, I don't think. Do I? Oh, I do have the chapter titles. I'm gonna share these with you for a second. We have From Chaos to Calm, Communicating My Story. Turn bedtime stories into next day learning. Make a dinner conversation into an academic conversation. Name that kickoff, solve that problem. Teach writing on the side of your fridge. Homework helper with story sparkle. How to make and carry out a plan. Telling math stories. Chatting made easy, 6-second stories for initiating conversation. The book report. The research project. Me versus you, resolving conflicts among peers. So those are that's our chapter outline for our parent guide that's going to be coming out very soon. And if you're looking to share with parents, there's a chapter in the Brady manual that talks about how to approach parents and how to help them to share. Let's see.
Somebody had a question about how would you put the DocHub document into a Word document? I only know how to send it as an attachment. So that would be something I'd have to ask Bill how you would take it out of DocHub and put it in the Word document. I've only sent them as attachments. I don't know if you know, Sheila.
I don't know that, but I bet you could probably find out if you Google DocHub convert to Word. You could probably find that out. Somebody asked also, how successful are you with distance learning with SGM? We've heard so many good things about people using our forms, that our downloadable forms like Linda showed at the end, along with the digital icons and with of course, I don't have my story grammar marker.
Because you can take any single one of their forms that are in a manual you purchase, at the beginning how you have that code and you get the free forms. You can take any form and turn it into a template and insert text boxes and type into it, any one of them.
Yeah, any one. And somebody asked, is there a point system for assessment with to use with Big Al, like you had with?
For the questions, well, we developed our own questions to use, and we had 10 questions that we came up with. Mary Ellen has them in one of her manuals. I don't know.
It's in the SGM manual.
Story grammar marker manual.
Yeah. So we gave, and there was 5 inferential and 5 factual. But then when you score the narrative that they give you, you would use the same point system that Mary Ellen did. You had on her progress monitor. You would just total up the points they get and put them in the box at the bottom.
Yes, because it's independent of content.
Correct.
So it's whatever story you're using,
That's right.
you can do that with it. And so that's what makes it nice with the classroom teachers, because the
Right.
classroom teachers are looking at their curriculum. They aren't looking at Big Al or something like that. They're
That's
looking
right.
for a way to, or we're looking for a way to help them with that. And I also wanted to mention the tools themselves, the mini marker, the little story grammar marker, which can be sent to somebody that you're working with in Telepractice, and they can use it on the other side of that, just similar to what you might do in school. There's something to be said for the manipulative itself and for getting that into the hands of very young children. And the 8th grader is great with icons. Okay.
Somebody said, since we have engaged in telepractice, some of my parents have watched therapy using story grammar marker. I've received a great compliment this morning. My parent said she noticed how much more her child's comprehension and ability to answer questions has grown. That's awesome, Laurel. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And what's cool about doing, but what's cool about using story grammar marker is that you have this, as I was saying to Mary Ellen, you're on a shared platform. It's contextualized. Both you and the kid are talking about the same thing. You're not talking about something in the past. You're not talking about the future. It's you're sharing this event live, and it pulls these kids in with their language, who are language impaired.
Right.
Let me see if there's any other. I know Bill is checking on if you had some. Okay. Let's see. I just want to check if there was anything else that was like a really suggestions for middle separate forms with Zoom. We already talked about that. Yeah, this will be recorded, so I know people wanted to know that.
And people are wondering about whether there's other things to use for a narrative for high schoolers and other prompts. So that is something that I can talk to Mary Ellen about, and we can try to think of some other things.
And we have, we're probably going to do a follow-up on this for.
We are, right.
And we
do a
have
follow-up on what are you going to do for treatment?
ideas for treatment and intervention using short stories and things like that.
So we'll have more.
Yes. So thank you all so much. If there are additional questions that we didn't get to, I am sorry. If you have any questions, I'm going to put my email.
And I wanted to say one thing about, first of all, thanking Linda very, very much for this.
You're
and
welcome.
for calling me up that day. And, also to have you be sure to look at our blogs written by Sheila Zagula, because there's so much there for younger children as well. So.
And I want to say that we really owe a big shout out to both Mary Ellen and Sheila for putting these webinars together. A tremendous amount of effort and time goes into them, and they make it look so easy, but it's so much work. And I also want you each to reach out, cross your hands, and pat yourself on the back, because what you are all doing right now via Telepractice is simply amazing. And you all need to be commended for your hard work.
Yes. Thank you, Linda. Thank you. And thank you so much. And I'll be sending an email with the downloads. If you look at our website by 5 o'clock, I'll have everything listed there. I'm going to start working on it right now because it's 4:30. And we'll get those to you. And if you have any other questions, I just put our email addresses in there. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you enjoyed this. And Mary Ellen and Linda will be back in a few weeks to do follow-up on treatment, or maybe a couple weeks. We got to see. We'll have to take a little.
Yes.
We have to take a break. Yeah.
What we would do with this boy and people around his age. So
That's right.
Yes.
so
Because we believe that there's a gazillion other children out there like him.
yes,
Yes.
and the other thing about it is he should be a stage 7 and have complex
I
sentences
know.
to really benefit from the curriculum. So we've got to get him there, as you all know.
Yes.
So,
All right. Thank you
okay.
so much. Thank you. And thank you all for your comments. And we're going to sign off so I can make sure you get all of your downloads. I know everyone's very, very concerned. But it's always like that because this is what Mary Ellen and Linda have put together is just amazing. Thank you, Kano.
Have to
Good to
thank
see you.
Sheila for putting it all together in the
I
first
know.
place.
And
I
Bill,
just want
Thanks,
to
Mel.
sit here.
All right. Good to see you all. Thank you, Linda.
you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. I'm going to end.